The BREWtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. BREWtallyspeaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the BREWtallyspeaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Telle Smith of The Word Alive. They have a new album out called Hard Reset. Honestly, just a great title for, I think, a lot of us and what we've gone through over the last couple of years. And Telle is somebody that, it's funny in the thinking about the journey of kind of my coming to know the band and getting to speak with Telle a few times now. I think this is the third time we've done something for the podcast. And it's interesting to think back about who I thought Telle was and sort of the change for me of my perspective of him. And it was honestly him doing a live podcast for Shane Told's Lead Singer Syndrome show where I felt like I really got to know him, that, you know, he was not who I thought he was. He always seemed like someone who was very serious and not really sociable from my perspective, but hearing him on the live podcast, hearing him be funny, hearing him, you know, just be a great guest. You know, someone, when you do this podcast, you want someone that's willing to, you know, be able to hold their own in a conversation as well as being willing to be open and honest. And with the first conversation that Telle and I had years ago when they were here in town on the Monomania tour, I believe he had even kind of said that he had been working on himself because he, and I don't want to necessarily put words in his mouth, but maybe wasn't happy with where he was or who he was. And even with this, you know, the hard reset, it's a thing where, you know, Telle and I kind of get into just kind of breaking down some of our own barriers of, you know, insecurities and fears, and kind of being honest as people with one another about how do we get better. And it's interesting, as I'm sitting here recording this the day before this episode comes out, you know, because sometimes I like to almost treat these like a form of therapy for myself to a degree where when I was going through therapy, something that I would do, and I was actually just talking about this with some friends, so it's this whole thing of this episode and this intro and outro, I think are going to be very tied to my experiences last night. But I was talking with two of my best friends very similarly with the conversation that Telle and I kind of had. And, you know, I had made the comment to a friend that's about to go to therapy or start therapy, I should say. And I was talking to him about how something that worked for me was that instead of kind of the homework I was given, for lack of a better term, I would wait until my next therapy session to discuss how the things we had discussed, the things that we were going through or how they applied in my life. I didn't want to reach out to my therapist in the week before in the time before our next session, because I wanted to see how life was going to happen, how I would utilize the new tools I was given to then move forward. And I was telling my friend, if I can give you any advice, and maybe it doesn't work for you, but like let the therapy, let the session, let the tools that you've now been given, let them see how they manifest in your day-to-day, so that when you go back to your next session, you can then kind of open up and go, I saw that this worked. Or maybe you realize that it's even with the tools, you still need a little bit more help in how to make those tools work for you in your day to day. And I kind of treat this like that. Like, I want to see what happens throughout the week. I want to see if there's something that correlates to the conversation I had with somebody else. And I think it just makes, I don't know, just being present, I think makes everything better. And I think for me, that was the hard reset for me, is that I needed to be more present. I needed to be and understand boundaries and do all these things. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the whole reason that you do these things is to be a better person, to be more present. And I was reminded last night talking to two of my best friends who we all lived completely different lives, but that we have been a constant in each other's lives for 20 plus years. And it is a thing where at the end of the day, I just want to see my friends do well. I want to see them be the best people. And sometimes that includes having hard conversations. And it's not coming from a place of maliciousness or being better than. It's just that you want to see people be the best versions of themselves and be happy. And sometimes maybe it just takes a little prodding of being like, do you think this might be a thing that could help you? And I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about the idea and the concept of a hard reset. And I don't know. It's as far as the actual album goes, it's a really great record. So I strongly encourage you all to listen to it if you haven't already. Obviously, it's out. It's been out for a little bit, but I don't know. If you go back and listen to the record, really pay attention to the lyrics. Kind of think about the idea of a hard reset, and kind of take it all in and see how it touches you or what it inspires you to do, to maybe seek out those things for yourself. Because ultimately, I do believe that we all want the best version of ourselves out there. So with all of that said, let's get into my conversation with Telle, and I'll talk to you all on the other side of it. As you, but really in the sense that, so the Atreyu Memphis Mayfire tour just came through a couple days ago on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I woke up Monday with like the worst hangover I've had in a very, very long time. Like I don't get hangovers very often anymore. Yeah. And it was one of those where I was thinking to myself yesterday as I was like, Jesus Christ, this is awful. And all I could think was, I was like, yeah. And I haven't had one in a while. Like I, was like thinking to myself, I was like, man, I made the most like list of rookie mistakes, like ate a chicken wrap for lunch or like an early dinner, which didn't go very far. Yeah. And then I didn't drink water once I started drinking, which was equally as bad. And then I just kind of thought to myself, and I had texted Porter the next day. It was just like, I know you have a day off, but I was like, it kind of is, it's got to be really hard knowing that, like, the old saying of like, it's this person's like quote unquote weekend with you or whatever. Like it's their time to party, but that's your every fucking day. Like
every day.
It's got to be so hard.
Yeah. Sometimes my friends will come and I'm just like, no, I can't, especially on tour. It's, for me, it's rough. Like all it takes is like one night having, if one too many. I've tried to drink less and less and less on tour over the years. And some nights, it just happens because whatever, celebrating certain friends out, maybe I haven't seen them in a long time. But if it's a friend I like see decent enough, I'm like, yeah, I love you, but if you're trying to rage, go. You can do that on your own.
Well, I think that was the thing for me, was a little bit of a shocker because Porter, for the last handful of years, hasn't been drinking. So that side of him I haven't seen in a while. And then you might notice at the intersection, kind of like the main guy, whenever you're working, he catches like all the concert goers and usually sings along to all the show, all the people performing. But it was sort of amusing because he was like, yeah, Porter was like, here, have another shot. And I was like, I have to make the decision right now. Am I sleeping in my car or am I leaving and going home?
Yeah.
And he goes, it wasn't even like a bad thing. It just is like, you feel he's so nice, and it's such a like a camaraderie thing. Like he just wants to hang out and have a good time with you. And I was like, yeah. And that's the thing is like, it's almost like the Southern gentleman in him comes out too, where you're like, well, I just feel like I'm going to bum you out if I say no.
Yeah. You know, peer pressure is real. It gets to you. It's just a little different when you're older.
Yeah. So I don't typically talk about the record because I feel like it sort of really dates the conversation, be a little bit more timeless to a degree. But there's something that was interesting about your guys' new record. A few things, actually. But one of them is, you know, you worked with a handful of producers on this one instead of having like a dedicated one. And while that's kind of typical outside of, you know, the music genre that you are in, it's interesting because like one of the last records that I really kind of fucked with the idea of like two producers really coming together and creating something interesting was the last Pusha T record. And what was interesting is Kanye did half the record and then Pharrell did the other half. And what made me find it really interesting and how it correlated to you is both those producers have been working with Pusha for so long that it kind of allowed a record to feel new because the producers themselves have grown, but it also allowed Pusha T to kind of have a familiar sound while still kind of evolving who he is as an artist, because those people have been along the journey and there's the familiarity with each other and how they all kind of get the best things out of each other when they're working. And it was kind of one of the first things I really thought of when listening to this record and knowing that you kind of had like the all-star team of producers, like someone new, someone that you've worked with before, and kind of wanted to get a little bit more of like your take on it. Cause I feel like like I said, it's not really a common practice really to have in like rock and metal and so forth, to have multiple producers working on something.
Yeah. It's definitely not. And it's something that we hadn't ever really done either. We've had a couple songs here and there. Like the first time on Real, we did 2 songs with John Feldman, Lighthouse and The Runaway. But those songs felt so different from the rest of the record that it did almost feel like a different band. And when bands say that, I think I can acknowledge it and see it way more for what it is now than like in the moment. Like in the moment, I was like, well, it's still us. But I totally get it now. And, you know, I didn't want that to happen. You know, I didn't want it to feel like a different band from producer to producer. I just know that, yeah, like working with Eric, working with Matt Good, we've had some of, you know, our band's best music that we all love, that fans love, and that, you know, they're the songs that we play, and it's like, you know, 5-10 years later, whatever, you know, fans are still coming out to shows, like singing those songs and vibing with. So to have those guys be a part of 4 like key songs, and then have Hiram bringing something new to the table while also like taking that new edge that, you know, we were trying to put into the record, and having that flow with the songs that we did with Eric and Matt. I think to me, like I always want to make a record like that now. And, you know, you have elements, you know, Eric is his own person and producer, Matt is his own person and producer, same with Hiram. And so you're just naturally, it's like I could go into a room with each one of those guys with a set intention of I want to write a song like this, you know, whatever that is. And that song will be different with each person, even though like if it's me, all the elements of me are the same going into those. But well, I should say even that would be slightly different because of my personal relationship with each. There will be certain levels of things where we talk about or go to, or, you know, the things that I can relate to with Eric might be different from the things I do with Matt or Hiram, or the interests, you know, might be different. So maybe you go down a little bit different lane than you would have with this person. So to me, there are great things that we do with Eric and Matt, and just acknowledging that, and then being able to be so open in a room with them because of the history. Um, you know, I spend off tour. There's arguably no one that I see or spend more time with than Eric. So we are physically, bonded and hanging out all the time. And then with Matt, it's like he was such a pivotal, part of our band, transitioning into the second half of our career, that he just, I don't know, I feel like he is a part of what the Word Alive sounds like today. And then you have Hiram, who is much younger, a lot more like quote unquote unproven, but an incredible songwriter, guitarist. Just he hears things in a really cool, unique way. And me and him speak like the same language with like writing. Like me, I write a lot of things in my head, and I can't play everything, on guitar, but I can verbalize it in a way that he just gets. So it's like it's really fun and really easy and fast to work with him, because I'm like, what if it was like, and he's like, I know exactly what you mean, and so he can do it. So like having him be able to do that was really great for this record.
I think there's a few things interesting about like what you're saying, and I picked up on a word you said, and it was the intention, your intention to do something. And I feel like that's such a therapy thing to say, being mindful of your intentions and the intentions that you're putting out and so forth. And I feel like, honestly, like, it's interesting to me when listening to this record, because I mean, in the day and age now where like digital is kind of king for how we consume our media, I remember like taking a look at like the album title, and it was like, all right, Hard Reset. I think collectively we can all agree that we all went through that in the last couple of years. And hopefully everyone kind of comes out of it with a better understanding of themselves, how they want to do things. But I mean, there was something interesting to me. Like, I mean, just the first track, The Word Alive is Dead. I'm kind of maybe the first person maybe to go with this route, but it kind of reminded me in name, where before I even heard the song, I was like, oh, I wonder if this is sort of like, Refused. The Refused are fucking dead. And that it's sort of like, it's setting the tone of like that what you knew of us, who we were, has changed. We're not these people anymore, because we're always evolving. We're always ever changing. And that sort of like this album as a hard reset is kind of the new beginning of who you want to be, the intention of who you want to be. And I don't know, it's interesting, like kind of the few times you and I have talked through this medium. I think I said it the first time we talked when you were here in GR, and I said, it's funny because I feel like sometimes people or lyrics or whatever will find you when you need them. And I feel like this record was kind of that for me. There's a lot that you talk about, and the things that at least I'm picking up on it, feel like it's something I kind of needed to go through or be reminded of. So like I said, the fact that you said your intention for something, I picked up on kind of as a thing that we talked about in therapy when I would go. So
I would say virtually everything on this album is very intentional. And that's from the technicality of drums, guitars, bass, the flow of the record, the speed, the tempo, of the songs, from the track listing. Like, this record truly is meant, I mean, all of ours are meant to be, but this one spent the most time switching around songs. This one was the most intentional with the track list of, the flow of the record. And everything that was written about, I felt like it was something that I knew for the most part people would be able to find something to connect with through their own lives. Like, at least most people on earth have gone through a lot of the things I talk about on this album. And that was important to me, to have a record that wasn't just saying like the coolest words or trying to rhyme the best, but it was like, what am I saying? And is this something that's real and authentic to me, but that I feel like if I'm telling this story, whether it's about me or someone else, that it's something that can hopefully help someone through, a hard time. Because I think that's kind of been what the word alive at our core has always been, is, you know, uh, a little, at times, anthemic. We have, life cycles, one of our classic bigger songs, that the lyrics, I've had countless people, show me like tattoos of that song, or just talk about what that message meant to them. And then through other songs, like whether people felt defeated and they felt like they couldn't put into words like how low they were, to have a song like Trapped, where people are like, this is how I feel. Like, I feel like there's so much going on in my head and my thoughts just get out of control. And, they're talking about anxiety and depression a lot of times. And going back to when that song came out and before, mental health was not that talked about at the time when we dropped Dark Matter, let alone any time before then. And so I feel like having a song like Trapped come out, now 7 years ago, it's like we've always talked about mental health as a band even, but that record really started the foundation for like working with companies and like doing nonprofit stuff. And so I wanted to continue that. And so I'm just trying to write about, the most personal things to me in my life, or, my friends, carrying some of the stories over, because I do every record from like movies or TV shows that I like or inspired by. But for the most part, it's just like I want to write something that I know like is going to verbalize what I know someone's going through. And if it can help them to not, it's not going to heal you necessarily or get you through it on its own, but at least just like sometimes all you need to know is that you're not crazy, and that the way that you're thinking or feeling like other people do. And I think that's like one of the best parts about music, and it's one of my favorite things to hear, is you wrote a song that expressed exactly how I felt when I couldn't put it into words. And so I think that's like why a lot of people have connected to our band over the years. And hopefully that's, a big part of why people are to this record.
This might be a weird question, but it's something I was kind of thinking about. And maybe this speaks to a little bit more of your process, or you as a person, you as a creative, I should say. But thinking about, like, to me, what I'm inferring is sort of at times a dissolution of like a relationship, a long relationship. Not sure, I look at it as more of a romantic one. But I was kind of reminded listening to a friend's new single that's coming out soon, that he wrote it about his dog that passed away. So things can be what they are, and you infer what you want from them. But it makes me wonder, like, are you able to come to these conclusions? Do you have these words? Do you have these thoughts in real time, or does it take you a while to actually process something that you're going through, and then you're kind of retroactively experiencing everything again?
Yeah, so great question. And it depends, there's no wrong or right way to, I think, write and to put these, thoughts to paper, so to speak. And you're right. Like, I've written songs that are not, about a romantic relationship at all. But do I try to write in a way in which it's a little more ambiguous at times? Like, I absolutely do, because just because I might be writing for one sole specific reason, I'm not always, but oftentimes I'm looking at how can I expand that just a little bit beyond my own personal, experiences. Um, and then sometimes, yeah, I'll get the question, it's like, oh man, like, who hurt you? And, I'm like, I've only really been in like 3 major relationships my entire adult life. It's not like I'm like going through like heartbreak over and over and over and over again. Um, so to answer your question, partially, definitely there's a lot of retroactive pain and memories, and a lot of that is from going through therapy myself. And I can look back at my whole life, and I can look at different scenarios. I can look at, the what ifs of certain situations. I can look at internally, like, man, like I fucked up, that even if maybe it took me 5 years to realize, or man, like I was the one apologizing, and I had nothing to apologize for. Like, you the further you get removed from very extreme emotional, reactive experiences, once that settles down and you're not being reactionary, then you can actually kind of look at it through a lens of like, okay, like let me look at everything from all angles. And so that's given me, I would say going to therapy has given me probably like years more worth of songs to write about, because, I'm able to even take certain experiences, and I've written stuff about, the music industry, or the band, whether it's internal struggles with previous like members of like our team, or things that have happened behind the scenes. And just wording things certain ways, like people probably think I'm writing about a girl a lot of times, but I'm really not. Um, and but that's just my writing style, though. Like, I like to write in a way that is really easy for you to connect on what might be like a really deeply personal level, because that's the whole point to me of music and connection, is like, I'm not just trying to write something that isn't, real, or and I don't really enjoy, this sounds weird maybe, but I don't really get that much enjoyment out of writing happy songs. To me,
Hmm.
the enjoyment is like letting stuff go. I don't want to let go of the happy stuff. I like the happy stuff. And a lot of times the happy things are a lot more private for me. And
Hmm.
so it's easy. And I think I actually saw um or read rather, Landon from Plot You had made this post, and he's married happily, band's killing it. He has all these great things going for him. He's incredibly talented on all levels, and he's just like, it's just fucking easier to write dark, weird, gnarly, heavy shit. And I'm like him in that I would rather get anything like that out of me than carry it with me. So to me, it's like a very therapeutic, experience to like write a song. And then sometimes too, I'll write a song, and then I can be like, man, like that's kind of like you letting go of that experience, and whatever pain it was still latched onto you. And even when you didn't even think it was still having any impact, but for whatever reason, me writing a song about it and then acknowledging what the song is or isn't about has an impact on even me after the fact. So I just kind of try to let the song and the emotion of the music dictate what I write about. I don't go into the studio and say I'm going to write the saddest song I can. I don't go into the studio and I'm going to write an angry song. Like, I just go into the studio, I start playing chords, and I feel the mood of the day, and I don't know, it's just like I've heard a lot of songwriters refer to it as the song's already there and already written. You're just like the vessel to let it, come out through. And that's kind of how I feel at this point in my life. Like, I could go to the studio every single day and write a song or 2 or 3 songs a day for the rest of my life, but that's just because I love all kinds of music, and it's my favorite place to like let things out. So I feel like when I'm not in the studio, every day that I'm not is a day that I'm building up towards when I go back. And so I don't know. It's I would say there's a lot of retroactive communication coming out. Some lost, some felt personally, some from stories or things I've read about. Whatever it is. Um, but, there are obviously, I think, in the moment, sometimes I've had shit happen, like, say, violent noise. I woke up to a text from Matt Good when we were in the studio for him, and it was the day that Chester passed.
Mm.
And he was like, if you don't want to come to the studio today, I totally get it. And one of our other friends, our Monster Energy rep at the time, he had reached out to me because he knew how much a huge influence Chester was on me. And he was like, you should absolutely go in the studio today. He's like, today is the day where you have whatever you're feeling right now because of this. He's like, is something that you need to let out, and you should do so at the studio. So I went and we wrote the song War Evermore. And the music was mostly written, and I went in the studio and I just asked Matt to play like the demos we had already worked on and like the music beds. And I was like, I'm going to let whichever song speaks to me of how I'm feeling right now be the song we work on today. And it was that one. And I wrote War Evermore that day. So like that was a very real, literally in the moment song of how I was feeling. And on Monomania, our song No Way Out was very much like that. There are songs throughout our discography that were like very much written in the moment. But for the most part, it's a lot of retroactive, like the dust has settled and I'm just allowing chords and music to make me feel something, and I'm attaching memories to certain feelings, and it just kind of comes out.
It's interesting because as you're kind of explaining sort of your process to creating is essentially being present. Just that's all it is. It's really being present. And it's interesting because to me, I know you and I haven't talked about this because I hadn't gone to therapy since the last time you and I did anything. So that was a big thing for me that I was bad at and went kind of to solve, essentially, quote unquote, was overthinking, not being present, and how to do that. And it's interesting that when you sort of going again, kind of to the first thing I asked you, like the intent, your intention for something, I think there's something to be said about letting something happen, dealing with what's literally in front of you, and making a decision from there as to how you're going to proceed. And I think a lot of people don't do that because I think you're just always going. Everyone's trying to go, 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 go. That's the world we live in now, that it doesn't allow you to stop. Because essentially, if you do that, then everyone's afraid you're going to miss something else. But I feel like by doing that, I think it's like you're saying, like you become this conduit that instead of trying to be like, okay, I need to write a 2.5 minute like ballad today. Like if you go into it with your intention that that's what I want to do, you're probably not going to do it. And if you do, it's going to sound like shit because it's forced. It's not authentic. So I think the fact that, you're saying that like you go in just going, whatever happens is going to happen. I think that's probably why everything works out for you, and probably why people connect with it, because it's real. I mean, people can tell when something's fake and manufactured. I mean, most people don't like that typically.
Yeah. And I think throughout our career, there were times where we definitely, as a band tried to do certain things and it did end up feeling forced to me, or it just wasn't as, great as it could or should have been. But I think, sorry. I think that's just also something that you can learn in time, is to allow that to be. I think throughout our career, we're 15 years in now. I'm not worried about like, will we be a band in 2 years? Like, I know we will. So like for me, I'm able to just be like, we're here, we're established, we love what we do, and just go from there. Back then it was like, if we don't do this and this right, like we might not be a band in 2 years. So I think like some of that pressure, which a lot of it is unnecessary, unwarranted, and from outside pressures more than anything. I think once you get to this point, like where I'm at now, like music is more fun than it's ever been for me. And I think a big part of that is I just write feels good and what I love and what sounds like it would be fun to play live. And those are the things I'm thinking about when I'm in the studio. It's like I'm thinking about the shows, I'm thinking about our fans, I'm thinking about looking at each other on stage and smiling, having a good time. Like I'm not thinking about like, oh man, this song is gonna be on the radio. Oh, this song is gonna stream so crazy. Oh, blah blah blah. Hopefully this gets us this tour. Like that's not any second of a conversation in the studio at all. It's literally just how do you feel? That's it. Like how do you feel? And because to me, that's what the magic of music is.
I think the other thing too, and maybe I'm kind of speaking a little out of turn, maybe, but I feel like you don't have the insecurity of who you are maybe now.
Yeah,
And then
definitely.
something else I was even kind of thinking about, you had said something a couple minutes ago about how like you kind of keep the happy things for yourself, which made me wonder, are you someone who compartmentalizes a lot of your life? Like this is like these things go
Absolutely.
into this. Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I majorly so. I have very uh, diagnosed high functioning anxiety, and like I take medication for it. I have to compartmentalize. Like
Hmm.
because if I don't, then it feels like the floodgates are open, and then it's just like a riptide pulling you in, that you can't really control. For me, like I have to be like, okay, what can I control? What can I focus on? What is there something that I can do about this situation or whatever it may be? Yes or no? And then if it's no, okay, well then this needs to go in this box over here. And if and when I can deal with it or something presents itself, then I'll take that box off the shelf. But until then, I can't do anything about most things in life. And so I definitely compartmentalize a lot of things. The happiness stuff, I really try to focus on gratefulness, like overall. When I find myself falling away from that is when I feel like the lows feel lower. Um, and I think just being an artist in general, like you have high highs and low lows, and that's just a part of whatever is inside of me that draws me towards doing this. Like that, it's a blessing and a curse, I say. And and I think the way that you manage it the best is just by trying to be grateful for what you do have, and not focus on what you don't.
That's something I've been working on quite a bit. Like I'd like to say I've been more, no pun intended, mindful of it probably in the last like 3 to 4 months. But I feel like it's something I've been kind of working on for a few years, just not very well. But that idea of being mindful, but also more gratitude. Like, so like I had a friend, or I have a friend that's essentially kind of gearing up to go to rehab, and walking a few weeks or so ago. And this person was like, yeah, I'm going to be gone for a while. In like 8 months, I'll get to escape for a couple of days and, maybe we can hang out. And I was like, like, if I can offer you a piece of advice, man, like, I hear that and I correlate that as a negative thing. Like, I get to escape. I go,
Mhm.
don't look at it like that. I go, say it like, in 8 months, I'll have earned the right to leave for a few days and then we get to hang out. Look at it as a reward instead of a punishment. And all
Yeah,
it is just change literally how you are saying something, the verbiage you use, your mindset. And I feel
100%.
like even in just doing that has drastically changed my outlook on a lot of things.
No, it does. The way we speak to ourselves matters the most. And um, you know, outside of like clinical things and medical reasonings, our minds are so powerful, and we can control so much about our lives by what we think and what we allow ourselves to think. And um, yeah, focusing in on that again, being very intentional is a huge part of personal growth and happiness.
Another thing I kind of picked up on sort of in the lyrics, which again I'm like kind of bad at because I'm just working and I have it on, so I can't always see what song goes to what. It's just kind of like, I think it's track 3. I don't know. I just have it on a loop.
Yeah.
But it was a thing where there seems to be more accountability. I feel like it seems to sort of be more of a focus that maybe I've not noticed before from you, at least in what you're speaking about. But it kind of, as I'm thinking about that, I feel like you're someone who maybe has the same thing like that I kind of, I don't want to say suffer through, but that I constantly battle with, which is empathy, but to the point where I have to understand that like I need to set boundaries with people because I can't take on yours and somebody else's and somebody else's and somebody else's and then have no space for myself. Like I think if the compartmentalization thing was kind of, I guess, almost a thing for me where I'm like, I have to do that with people essentially. Like I only have so much bandwidth for these things, and unfortunately I just don't have it for you. And so that means that like I got to put our friendship a little bit on the shelf for now because I can't deal with it.
Yeah. I am a hyper empathetic person, and it is really hurt me not setting boundaries. And some of those boundaries are even just internal ones, with myself. And I think a lot of people probably feel certain ways or allow these things to grow. Again, I'm a huge therapy advocate. I have learned about the downfalls of being an empath and how it can really take a toll on you. I try to navigate it as best I can, and yeah, again, I think everything comes back to that word intention. Like I have to be intentional who I hang out with, who I spend my time with, who I tell about my life. I used to be pretty much an open book to a lot of people, and that really came back to, I wouldn't say haunt me because it doesn't haunt me, but people have attempted to use that against me for whatever reason, and or even just use it as a judgment about me. And I think that just being more careful who you share your energy with is vital. Like the older we get, like I do think it's kind of interesting because like being on tour and everything, it's kind of like this brotherhood. It's like there's probably thousands of people I've toured with as a whole over the stretch of since 2007 when I started touring. Um, and a lot of those tours would be like, oh, that's my friend. That's my friend. That's my friend. Like you don't have 1,000 friends. You have a lot of acquaintances that maybe know more about you than the average acquaintance would in other jobs. But at the end of the day, like I had to learn that I have like a shit ton of acquaintances, some that are great ones. But I don't have a ton of friends. And the more that I've focused in on that, the better my life has become, the more peaceful my life has become. And so I think while the way that I am is not necessarily conducive to certain ways of the world now, it is conducive to the circle of friends that I associate with the most.
It just kind of sparked an epiphany.
Love that.
So yeah. So tomorrow is my birthday, and I
Happy
between
birthday.
like I was saying, thank you. As I was saying, got to hang out with Porter and the Memphis dudes. We're gonna go see him on Friday too. And then I have a friend that randomly is on tour, and I'm gonna see him on Thursday. And then we're having like a big like dinner thing tomorrow. But it was a thing where you just kind of said like I feel like I would say I had a lot of friends. And I do the same thing where sometimes I'll look through my phone book and I'll be like if I'm gonna go out and I'm like, fuck, I only got like a handful of people that legitimately live here and would potentially have time to hang out. The rest of it, and this isn't like a slight on anybody, but I had the epiphany very recently where I was like, shit, I guess I don't really have like friends. This is probably what touring, like your epiphany just made me think this is what sort of the downfall of touring, I guess, does, where it's like you have people and they can be your friendly, they can be acquaintances. But the thing that I kind of just was thinking of is it's like, maybe that's what makes those friendships so valuable, is that we have this understanding, unlike maybe people we see in our day-to-day lives, where you and I understand,
Yes.
I don't have all this time. I have a 5-hour window to hang out with you. So really, let's make the most of this 5-hour time. And then the rest of it really is potentially managing the relationship through other forms of social media, whatever the relationship looks like at that point. But it doesn't negate the relationship. But I think that's hard for some people to understand, because it's a very weird, it's an anomaly. It's not a real life situation most people find themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, the music industry, entertainment industry as a whole, it's just different, like there's all these, I'm sure, like studies and numbers of like people out in society. It doesn't apply to the entertainment world, and it doesn't apply to music and musicians, and then people who like all their friends are musicians. Like, it probably doesn't even apply to you, because that's your environment, even if that's not your job title. Like, if the majority of your friends, say, are like touring musicians, like you're probably going to have a little bit different skewed version of what like reality is compared to someone who doesn't have that. And that's just something you get to understand more when you get older. And it's why this life it's a gift, and it's a very unique one, and it's special to get to share so many cool bonds with people. But those bonds don't necessarily have to be anything more than what they are. And I think that I don't know, it's almost like casual dating or something like that, where you're just like,
Kind of.
I know you're seeing other people, and that's okay with me. Just don't intentionally, don't do anything to be disrespectful to me, and we're good. Like, and that's just such a unique thing. And not everyone can do that, but that is like a great portion of the relationships that I think we probably all have within this industry. Is we have a lot of like casual friends, where really it's an acquaintance who is just a step above that, because you're not just like, I wouldn't care if you weren't around. There is some level of like caring involved, but it's not enough to change your day-to-day life, and to crack that 5 hours. You only have so much time, like you said. Like, your energy is finite, your day is finite, your life is, like, you only have so much you can give. And even on the days where you can give it, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And so that's a whole other thing. But yeah,
It's
I get
like I
it.
said, just
We're
something.
at the same page.
Yeah, no, just kind of an interesting thing. I guess I've never really thought of that, because I feel like again, intentions. If I had I guess an episode name for this episode, it would just be intentions. But no, you saying that just kind of triggered something where I was like, huh, never really thought about it that way. Which is why I love doing these, and I love that sort of like how you approach songwriting. It's why I don't like coming in with a shitload of questions pre-answered, because I probably wouldn't have stumbled across half of these things that we're talking about, because it's not where my mind would have been in the moment. Very weird question. Can I see the rest of your hoodie? Because it looks like something we just made at my job. Nope, never mind. Okay, there was more to a design that we just made that looked very similar.
Oh, okay. No,
So,
I don't even know where I got this. Could have been an
doing a bunch of
Instagram
stuff
ad.
for. Man, they're starting to get a lot better with those. Where I'm like,
They are, yeah.
I do
I'm
need that.
like,
I do want
I
that.
do need that, and I do like that. Yes.
When I bought my first targeted Instagram ad. I bought a T-shirt about a week ago from some company out in Denmark or something. It was very.
Yeah.
I was like, is this going to be bullshit? You just don't know anymore.
I was looking for luggage, and all of a sudden, I kept getting like a million of these luggage things, and I was looking up photos and reviews, and eventually there was this company that popped up, and they're somewhere in Europe, and I just wrote them, and I was like, hey, I'm in a band, travel around the world, looking for something really, really durable, that is also spacious and blah blah. Blah. It has different unique things to it for storage, and you guys look awesome. Like, would you be down to send me one, and I'll like make a review or post about it? And they're like, we've never done that before, but sure. And like they did, and it's sick. It's like my favorite suitcase I've ever owned. So, and that was from an Instagram ad.
I'm still waiting for Instagram and all the other social media that I choose to be on to send me $1 million. Like, I think about that and talk
I
about it
mean,
all the time, and that never
I mean, that'd be
happens.
sick. Yeah, that'd be sick. That'd be sick. Well, for the record, nobody's sending me just money either. So, maybe we need to play the lottery.
Someone's got to win it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You see, and now with all these like documentaries and so forth, like you see, it seems like this is such a weird way to say this. I feel like I wouldn't want to win a ton of money. Like, okay, if like the Powerball or whatever the fuck it is like $100 million, I'd be like, just give me like 10. And I think even that might be too much.
I mean, I live in LA, so 10 million could go super, super fast.
Yeah.
You're looking at like $2 million for like not even a crazy house, just a nice family home, in a safe neighborhood. You're like looking at $2 million. So that's 20% of that just right out the gate is just buying the home, not maintenance or anything else. So I would take the 100 million for sure. But I definitely would like try to like divvy that out and change some friends and families' lives for sure.
It's just one of those things you always hear, like it just essentially ruins someone's life because they don't. I mean, sometimes like
You
money like that, you just like you just can't even wrap your head around that money. You just make fucking stupid decisions. So I feel like I wonder
the
if the
first thing you
inverse to
need to
that
do,
would be
you have to get like a
good.
business manager right away. The people who just try to do it themselves, or they give all their money away to their family, and it's like everyone just comes with their hands out. Like, yeah, I've seen some of the things. Or like I saw this one woman was like dating this like shitty guy, and he like basically took control of her finances and spent all the money. Like, of course they're horror stories, but if you or I just want all that money, like get a proper financial advisor to set up some things, then you'd be fine. You'd be fine.
Here's kind of a weird question that like something you just said kind of popped in my head. You talked about getting a financial advisor. Obviously with the band, kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit, but like obviously you have different people who handle different facets of your career for you, probably
Yeah.
having, booking agent, all these different people. Have you found that having those people who are able to handle that part of your life in a professional setting, find that it helps you or translates into something that helps you in like your personal life? I'm kind of trying to find my way to the question, but like essentially it's almost like you have a team that kind of helps you be as successful as you can be and give you the freedoms that you need to perform. And it makes me wonder, like, would that be something you would like in your life? Like, do you think it'd be beneficial to have something like that in your life, or does the compartmentalization of that exist for my professional setting allows me to actually do something more in a personal setting?
So I think it's definitely helped and hurt. Um,
Hmm.
like most things, I feel like there are a lot of pros and cons to stuff. Like I think being a band my entire adult life, um, and having certain things done for me early on, definitely like I didn't learn certain skills or habits that would have suited me at this point in my life. And you just kind of like, yeah, like stuff just like happens and gets done or whatnot. So I think that can be of a hindrance to later in life, depending on what it is. But um, all that to say, like, not that it's not possible technically to be fully independent, but it would be so it takes a certain kind of person to do that, and I don't know that I have the mental and emotional capacity to sustain doing all of the things that are needed. Maybe if I would have like trained to be that from day one, maybe you just like this is all you know, but it would be really hard for me to go back because I can delegate certain tasks, or I can be like, hey, this isn't my specialty. Either you or you find someone that can, so it's done right. And then I have peace of mind and I just can move on and I can focus on being more creative. And so that's where I'm enjoying trying to work towards. Is I want to have the best team around me so that I can be as creative as possible, because I feel like when I'm at my most creative, it usually makes their jobs all easier. And so it's like for me, I want to be able to utilize them even more than I ever have. But then there's a side of me that can acknowledge, like, there are a lot of things that, like, if you ask me how to do a certain whatever thing, I might be like, I have no idea. Um, and it could be something small or normal. But then I also know a bunch of random skills from touring that, like, I don't need to know, but I do. So it goes both ways.
Do you feel like understanding your strengths and I guess even the weaknesses as well, and how to kind of go after and be more here we are again, be more mindful of what you want and how to go about doing it? Because I feel like something, especially during the pandemic, it seems like you really branched out and started doing a lot more. Like, you started doing Twitch. I mean, I think everyone kind of did there for a while, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like that would have been something maybe you wouldn't have done, wouldn't have felt comfortable doing. I don't feel
Yeah.
like.
Correct.
And then I feel like
That's a
potentially,
safe assumption.
but I feel like because now you allowed people to see that you are into video games and the things that you're into, like you ended up doing, was it 2 songs for League of Legends or something like that?
So I actually did more, but that came first. League of
Okay.
Legends started in 2018,
Okay.
and they just found the word alive and love my voice, which I'm very thankful for. But no, you're not wrong in that I would never have. I don't like public speaking, even like podcasts and random things. Like I I have a I have a speech impediment, which most people don't know. And when I was growing up, like I took speech therapy, and I literally like rode the short bus and all that fun stuff. And um, so I picked the worst job pretty much in the world for what I have, and it makes no sense. But once I'm on stage, like there's a part of me that can just like take over and like get beyond that. And every once in a while, it'll still like I'll have like an episode or something. It's a lot rarer these days because I had a really great teacher when I was a kid, and as I got older, I've I've understood that like it's gonna happen, and it does, and I just have to like stop, pause, take a deep breath. Basically, what happens is like my brain gets so far ahead of the the words that I'm trying to speak, and it's just like I can't speak, and I'll like merge words, stutter, and then it feels like you're just like choking me. And
Mm.
so like sometimes, like the public speaking thing, or like doing Twitch, is like the worst thing for me, because everyone's just like, like looking right at you, staring at there. Twitch, I thought I was going to hate. I did it, and it's actually helped me so much with my public speaking, um, in a way that I don't know I would have ever had an experience that could have helped me to do that better. And because of that, like I did a workshop for Heartsick Fest to like a couple hundred people, and I felt so much more comfortable with myself doing that because of streaming on Twitch for the last few years. Had I not done that, it would have been a lot for me, and I probably would have like been freezing and just not been able to communicate, articulately, or like how I want to say things. And so yeah, the hard reset, that, as I call it, like that's been real, I think, to a lot of people the last few years. Like for me, there also, while there were a lot of negative things, like there were some silver linings that have inevitably led to positive things in my life.
It's interesting to hear you say you went through speech therapy. I, as someone who grew up with a cleft lip and palate, had to go through a ton of that. And
Mhm.
it's funny because I'm not insecure about that now, but it's still something like I see it in others, like, and people are like, when I might say something, or someone will inevitably be like, "Oh, did you?" And I'm like, "Yep, I noticed yours too." Like, there are these kind of, and it's so weird because it's like, to me, like, the face is everything. It's the thing we always look at. So to me, I'm always surprised when people are like, "Oh, I didn't know you had a cleft lip. I couldn't even tell." And I'm like, "How do you not see the scar? That's like very noticeable." But it's one of those things, like, I guess, as we get older and you kind of talk about these things, it's like everyone, either you can kind of go into intentions. It's like, either you can understand that people probably aren't aware of their, like, because they're thinking of their own shit, and so they're not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
oblivious to
Not,
yours.
it's not like looking in the
Or
mirror.
maybe,
Like
yeah,
for us, we're like hyper fixated on ourselves, and I'm sure you've had that same thing happen to you, almost on an inverse. Like you're like, man, like I had no idea. Like it randomly, not to just to express how often I can say that that is true for people. I've met tens and tens of thousands of people for years and years and years. I had huge gauges, like, and there are people who were like, "You never had your ears pierced." Like I've seen you a bunch of times. I'm like, I did. Like these are thousands of people who've been like, "No, you never did," or like, I just put my septum ring back in, and people were like, I never saw you had a set. Like I had it for like 11 years, and you're zooming in and looking at photos probably at times. Like it's we do live in this mindset where we are so worried about what other people's perception or looking. You just assume, but like you're not doing that probably to other people. You're not like, oh, blah, blah, oh, yep, there's that. Oh, I see that. You know, I don't think most people do that. Now, obviously, there are people who live a more judgment filled life, but for the most part, people are just talking, experiencing moments. They're not like studying other people's bodies, I think, as much as we think.
no, I do think the one thing that I do tend to focus on myself is watching people. Like, I think people are just
I love
interesting, and
people
I think
watching. Love people
it
watching.
really became interesting working at a bar, like a bar. 'Cause essentially, and I have to kind of pay attention to what's going on, because maybe there's body language or things that could escalate into a fight or whatever. So me, as a not very physically imposing person, because I'm 5'7" and just not a very, like, one I had to do that was like 6'3" came in. He's like, "You're the bouncer. What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I'll have to figure it out."
Yeah.
But it's a thing where you become aware of so much. Like I said, like the nonverbals that a lot of people will give off, or even conversations when you're privy to them because they're happening a foot away from you. And it's just interesting to exist but not exist because everyone has looked past you. And it's honestly, I was thinking about this the other day too, because I kind of did the same thing where I was kind of sitting and watching everyone kind of converse and have different conversations. And I was like, it's very weird to understand that these things are happening in front of you and you're not involved in any of them, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that these people don't like you.
Yeah.
But it's also weird in this day and age to kind of be able to disappear in a room full of people like that and be overlooked.
It's, weird times, but it's the world we live in.
So, kind of a last two questions for you before I let you go and get back on with your day. Someone actually just made a comment on this the other day. They sent me a DM, and I didn't realize anyone cared about this quote unquote segment until someone was like, why'd you stop doing that? So one of my podcast sponsors is Rockabilia. They do a bunch of clothes and band merch and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so the started to ask people was, what is or was your favorite piece of band merch that you have or owned?
Currently, I'd say probably one of my Deftones shirts, or I have a Tenacious D one from when we played with them at Blue Ridge. But one of those shirts would be my favorite.
Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting path for them the next year.
I mean, from what I know about festivals, they probably were already working on and or probably had confirmed stuff for next year, which I'm interested to see how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to some people about it, behind the scenes that are like, I mean, I would agree to play it, but they're gonna have to pay more, and you kind of have to pay a premium for the what if of, okay, well, what if we travel all the way out there and then there is no catering and there is no this and there is no that, and like, so you're gonna have to pay a premium on what you would normally pay. So plus then dealing with insurance and rent stuff, they have a long road ahead of them.
The weirdest thing about it all to me, though, is in light of, I guess, Firefest 2 becoming a thing, and now in light of the two different Woodstock 99 documentaries, that it feels like, I feel like even everyone knowing what we know that's out there and speculated and all that, I still feel like people would go just to experience the shit show,
Look,
which is weird.
if you get enough of the right lineup, people will risk it. And
Yeah.
there will probably, I would say there will be things set in place from like a contractual standpoint and legal standpoint with the state, with so much, like probably with the local union. You're gonna have to probably make guarantees and have proof of bookings and changes, whatever, to do it properly. That's why I say they have a long year ahead of them. Is, I know more than the average person, but I don't want to speak to what I know behind closed doors. But what I would say is there is a path back, but I think that path is going to require a lot of work and a lot of legally binding, obligations at a much sooner point than maybe they would prefer to. But we'll see what happens. You never know.
Yeah. And then lastly, where can anyone find you, or anything you would like to plug online?
For the band, you or myself, the easiest way would probably be go to our Instagrams at the Word Alive, at Telle TWA, and then we both have link trees in our bios, and then you can find all the other stuff. Or if you Google the Word Alive, you'll find us.
Good SEO for the band name.
Yeah, Yep.
because those things matter. Well, thank you again for taking the time. Always a pleasure talking with you, and hopefully catch you on this upcoming tour. I think you guys are coming to Flint, I believe.
Yep. It's about to sell
This is
out.
the
I think
Michigan
the
date.
next 24 hours.
Well, motherfucker, I don't get
gonna be a
paid
fun
until
one.
like Friday.
I got you. I don't have a bunch of friends in Flint. If it sells out,
I don't think many people do.
Yeah. You're good.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon.
All right, sounds good.
See ya.
All right, bye.
So that was my conversation with Telle Smith. I want to thank him once again for taking the time and as always, for being such a very gracious person. Not only with being open to talking about pretty much anything that I bring up, but I guess ultimately too for making me feel like I can kind of say things and be a little bit more raw and out there myself. I've said so many times, echoing the sentiments of Dewey from Pure Pleasure Podcast, him and I talking about that this medium doesn't work when it's always one-sided. If you're just taking and taking and taking from the guest, but you're never giving anything of yourself, then this doesn't work. This medium doesn't work. And it's not even just the medium of podcasting. It's actually relationships. You can't just take and never give. And ever since he kind of put that idea in my head, I've tried to be more mindful of that in my day-to-day life, that I can't always be taking from things, that I need to give back. And I feel ever since that it has been such a rewarding experience just in my life and communicating with friends and experiences I have, but also moving forward doing this show. I think it has made the show and the guests have better conversations. And I know that to be true. Like, there is an episode that will be coming out soon with Garrett from Silent Planet, and I sent it to a friend of mine, Dale, who you've heard us talk about on this show a couple of times, security guard here at multiple venues here in Michigan, and just a great fucking person. And ultimately, I had sent him the chat with Garrett because he is friends with Garrett. He knows the band, and I figured I could just get some honest feedback about the episode. Just because it was one of those things where I was still, been doing this for 7 years and 400 plus episodes, and I still get a little nervous when I think there is a band and a fan base that is so loyal and diehard that the expectation of what I want may not meet their expectations, and I just don't want to do that. And so, look at that. Even still, I have insecurities about things and overthink things, but it was the thing where I had sent Dale the episode, and to get the feedback from him and to hear, that there was things in that chat that made him feel something from even knowing this person and knowing the information contained in that conversation. It's when I knew something was good about it. I felt good about it, but to have the affirmation that basically it was as good as I remember, I felt it being in the moment. And it was because Garrett and I were able to give and take for one another. And ultimately, that's what I feel like every time I talk to Telle. There's a nice give and take, and he's just so gracious. And I honestly, I don't know how else to say it. I enjoy talking to this dude so much. Every time I get to talk to him for the podcast, I always look forward to it. I know it's going to be something that will stick with me. And so I'm just always appreciative of that. And that's really been a theme so far this past weekend, is being appreciative of the people I have in my life. All that said, I'm going to start wrapping up this episode because I don't necessarily want to make this be longer than it needs to be. If you're still listening and have been listening, thank you so much. Honestly, I've been starting to get a lot more feedback about episodes, people reaching out, furthering the conversation that I have with people on the show. And honestly, it's great. I love doing this. When I don't do it, it feels like a part of me is missing. And I just really love doing this, and I love getting to share these conversations that I enjoy with you. So thank you. In wrapping up this episode, though, if you would like to keep up with The Word Alive, you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at The Word Alive. You can go to their website at wearethewordalive.com. If you would like to keep up with Telle, you can find him on Instagram at TelleTWA and Twitter at Telle Smith. Everything is in the show notes down below of wherever you're listening to this. Click the links, whatever. If you would like to keep up with the podcast, you can find us simple enough at BrewSpeakPod on all your social media platforms. Actually, you can keep up with some of the drinks I've been having this past weekend. Last night, I had a very delicious cocktail at Devani. No surprise if you've heard me talk about that place. If you follow me on socials, you know that I enjoy the shit out of some cocktails. Marcus and the crew over there at Devani, always a pleasure, always so welcoming and accommodating, not just of me, of anybody. It is truly a hidden gem here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So if you ever get an opportunity and you are coming through here, please go. I do know that there is one person who has reached out to me that say that they made a trip out of their way while they were here in Michigan and went there and had exceptional cocktails and food. And that really warms my heart because honestly, sharing drinks it's why I kind of named the show what I did, because I want this show to kind of feel like you're sitting there having good conversation and good times at a bar with people you know and love. So shout out to the Devani. Also, if you would like to keep up with our sponsors, go over to rockabilia.com. They have so many things. Holidays are around the corner. They've been killing it, actually, with the Halloween releases, working with all these bands. Like, Jesus Christ. I often joke with Frankie, spill the beans on who you're working with or what you're doing for a new collab, and every time he's still... When I think you are working with some of the best bands doing the coolest shit, you somehow even top that. So Rockabilly is killing the game right now. Holidays are right around the corner. Go use our code BREWtally at checkout. Take 10% off your total purchase order. Pick up some swag, man. There is some cool shit over there. Go support them and save some money while you're doing it. Starting Arts Brewing, they are closed for the season. And that bastard, Andrew, who runs it, is down in Florida right now with his family on a vacation, getting out of this cold Michigan weather that we are experiencing. But they are making some cool stuff, and we are going to be doing a phone call here pretty soon. And I got to start working on a beer. I have a couple of ideas. We are in fall season, and I'm already, my ideas for some beers that I want to try to do next year are already ruminating in my head, and I'm just very excited to work with some people who are very passionate about beer, passionate about their community. And honestly, even beyond that, just their tagline of sorts, judge beer, not people. I think too often about that and how we just need to be better as people. So love my sponsors and what they do and all the awesome things they do. Definitely inspiring to try to keep up with them. I think that's just a thing in life in general. Surround yourself with positive people who are killing their own things, whatever it is that they do, and be supportive of it. And you will never be lacking for inspiration to continue to do your own thing. All that said, if you would like to send me an email or anything, you can email me at brewtallyspeaking@gmail.com. If you want to keep the conversation going, send me a DM, do something like that. I try to respond to everything as much as I can. Sometimes I see things, and I'm going to be honest, I will go, I need to respond to that, and then I just forget. So sometimes if you do send me something and you see that I've seen it, know that it's not necessarily that I'm ignoring you. It is more that I am trying to do a million things all at once, just like a lot of us are. And I will get to it. I'm trying to be better at that, but I'm also trying to be better at setting boundaries and not extending myself into a million other things. In the rat race that we live, I think it's sometimes very hard to remember that. All of that said, enjoy the rest of your week. I will be back next time with Sean Cooper of Taking Back Sunday. That was a really fun chat. Excited for you all to hear it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll talk to you then.